Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm talking about five of the weirdest Pokemon cards we've seen in the past. Well, they're on standard, right? So in the past 3 years, and these cards are really weird. Pokemon doesn't print a ton of super bizarre cards, but these are definitely pretty unique. And leave down below in the comments other cards you have that are unique like this if you want me to cover more of them. But as I said, we're just covering five. We're starting things off with Amoonguss with its ability Surprise Spores. It is a stage 1 Pokemon. There's a Foongus, and it does have an attack, it has HP, it has stats, but these stats don't matter like at all. And the only thing that this card could be used for that is interesting about it is going to be its ability. As I said, it's called Surprise Spores, and it says during your opponent's turn, if this Pokemon is discarded from your hand by an effect of an attack or ability from your opponent's Pokemon or by an effect of your opponent's item or supporter cards, discard your opponent's hand. Now, this is weird. It's an ability that can only work on your opponent's turn. That's not really something that I can think of us seeing before. It probably has happened before, but I just can't think of an example. And like this is weird, right? It's reacting to something your opponent does. It's a really powerful effect, right? Discarding your opponent's hand is insane. Probably winning you the game, not necessarily like instantly, but like unless they top deck out of it, or if they have an onboard draw engine like a Barrel, you actually probably get them out as well. But something like even Curlios like I guess get you out if you have a few of those. Certainly something like a just a Squovit or I mean, BBX is just okay. It will draw you 3 cards out of it, but it's not like super insane. The only thing really guaranteeing getting you out of it, especially that turn, would be something like a Barrel. Pidgeot EX again is like solid, but also then you're kind of in top deck mode as well. Pidgeot EX getting your card every turn though, but in like a lot of situations with just like random situations, this is insane. Of course, how do you trigger this, right? Like you don't have any control over triggering it, and it needs to be in your hand as well. So you would need to like search for it probably and searching for it would probably be with like an ultra ball or maybe a capturing aroma, right? Something that searches for Pokemon, which means then you reveal the card so your opponent knows you have it unless you've drawn into it or search for it with something like a Pidgeot EX, but then that's a card you've searched for that you haven't used. So if Amoonguss would be a meta card, they'd have some idea. But the biggest thing is it's like can't really get triggered. Like it's an ability that just doesn't really ever happen. There are a few ways to trigger it, notably in standard. The card that does see play is 06 Machinations, which by the way came out like way after. This card is a pretty old card in standard right now. We'll be rotating in a few months from now. Certainly we'll have some time left in standard. But this is an ability that just I've never seen triggered. I've almost never seen circumstances where it could be triggered. The only card I believe is Zoroark's Machinations. There's also Hand Trimmer, which is similar to it, which has seen just a very tiny amount of play. It's not a particularly good card, but can trigger it. I think there certainly are some attacks that could trigger it, but they're not attacks that like see play at all, and they are rare certainly as well. It's just an ability that like can't really happen, which is super bizarre. We haven't really seen anything like this before, and I don't think we'll really see anything like it again because it's kind of terrible. But it is a funny card. I think there's an alternate format where this is like the only Pokemon legal, um, that outside of like a basic or something that it's legal because it's like a weird card, but it's like a meme format. But this Amoonguss is definitely a very strange thing to kick us off with. But next we have Alexium EX. This card was considered really weird at the time of releasing, and is it has an interesting element to it. It does have Mind Jack, which says 90 for 2 for and 30 more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is okay. It's definitely a usable attack, but not the strongest attack in the game. And you do have 310 HP, which is kind of low. You do have 1 retreat, so you can get to the bench, though, for your attack dimensional hand. 120 for 2 Psychic, and it can be used even if this Pokemon is on the bench. This is certainly something very unique because, I mean, you attack from the active, right? The active attacks the active. This allows you to have certain Pokemon in the active that then you can attack behind. It has seen, like, some play, just very minor amounts of play because it's very gimmicky, which is like theoretically cool, but it can't really take good advantage. You hide behind Pokemon. Here we see Radiant Jirachi, which is a Pokemon that will set you up after getting knocked out. Then Klefki and Mimikyu, which are both considered walls. Walls are Pokemon that well, I don't know if Klefki is always considered a wall, but in this case, I'd say it is. But walls either like stop damage or disrupt your opponent, and you just leave them in the active, but they're, don't have very good attacks. Alex EX's attack would then be better than those attacks, though it's not that much better than Mimikyu's. It does 50 more damage, which is meaningful, specifically on the low damage outputs of the attacks, but it's also not like it's not huge. So you got this attack that's really unique. You are, I guess, immune from special conditions, essentially being on the bench, and you're immune to like certain things. And also, you can have another Pokemon in the active. That's a really big deal. But it's a card that I think a lot of people were kind of nervous it would be broken, if not in standard, where I am talking about these cards. They really don't have anything to say. There's not too much to say about them in expanded, though maybe there's be some more like in Moongus triggers, but Alakazam definitely like people are kind of worried about that having some weird broken combination, but without any broken combination, it's kind of bad. So it's yet again a card. I think all the cards in this list are going to be bad. The next one might not be like super terrible, but a lot of them are quite bad. But Alexam EX definitely falls into the that camp where it's not good enough and it can't like take good advantage of its gimmick. Its gimmick isn't something that like you really interact with at all with any other card. Being able to, you could also just have a single prize attack or Pokemon in the active, and then having essentially a single prize Pokemon using and with an attack being used from a two prizer is impressive, but the attack's not a good attack, right? So this is an attack you could find on all sorts of different Pokemon, 120 for two, not the from the bench thing. And yeah, this card's ended up being pretty bad, unfortunately. Even the Mind Jack attack is like stronger almost always as well, and that is actually a pretty solid attack. Then we have Palafin EX. At first glance, this card doesn't look too weird. This is definitely the best card we're taking a look at today, but it has its ability, which we'll get to, but then it's a stage 1 Pokemon, of course evolves from Finizen, has 340 HP, which is really high, and also has this attack here. You get impact, it cannot attack next turn, but that's not that big of a deal. It does 250 for only 1 water energy. This is insane. This is the tied for the highest HP that we've ever seen on an official card, and that you can like actually play. And then you also have this attack that is insanely powerful. It's only 1 energy. The downside is not non-existent, but it's certainly minimal, and it does so much damage, right? So Palafin EX's stats look insane, and then it has its ability. Let's take a look at the ability. Put this Spirit, put this Pokemon into play only with the effect of Palafin's 0 to Hero ability. Now let's take a look at Palafin. And that's a lot of text. I was considering putting the like Grand Tree card on this list because the text is super long. I feel like it's a needlessly complicated and like kind of weird card. It's kind of unique, but it's not that like crazy. Palafin, definitely, we see a lot of text here. This is the longest ability I've ever seen, I think. I'm pretty sure it's longer than the Amoonguss, and it's kind of weird. It's ability called 0 to Hero, which is the only way to get Palafin EX into play. If you ability lock it, you could put into play, but that would need to be ability locking your hand, which you can't really do. You can do in full expanded, though. Theoretically, that could be a cool thing with Garbodor. I believe that would work, but something like Path to the Peak would not be ability locking your hand. Iron Thorns EX, same deal. You cannot just like play down your Palafin EX then if you have Iron Thorns EX in the active, because it only locks Pokemon in play. But Palafin's here to Hero ability says once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the active to the bench, you may search your deck for a Palafin EX card and switch it with this Pokemon. Any attached cards, damage counters, special conditions, turns in play, and any other effects remain on the new Pokemon. This is the same wording, that switching wording, I believe, as Thornton, which is again a unique supporter card. Though nothing super crazy. But then it says if you switch a Pokemon in this way, put this card into your deck, then shuffle your deck. If you played Pokemon TCG Live, you know this card did not work right at all. It was completely broken. It would freeze the game. It wouldn't always immediately freeze the game though. It would also do weird stuff in the meantime. Cards would disappear and then reappear and just like change location and then fly. Like because the board's kind of 3D in Pokemon TCG Live, so they like float, hover above the board, and then get like stuck and stuff. and then your like cards would change what card they were. It was very, very strange. Of course, that's not what was intended. That was just a bug, or a bunch of bugs which were in the game for a long time. But anyways, Palafin is definitely a very strange card with this like switching thing, where you're actually switching from a card in your play to a card in your deck, but also switching from the bench to the active, or from the active to the bench, I should say. And this also leads to this card being, kind of sketchy. Let's say you start the game, you start with not a Finizen in play, and in the active. You start whatever. We'll say you just start some like random Pikachu, and then you now need to switch the Pikachu out for the Palafin. Now you need to switch the Palafin out to trigger the ability. Then you need to switch the Palafin, which is now an EX, back in to actually attack. So that's 3 switches. Obviously, you want to start Palafin, so that reduces a switch, and you also want to have a Pokemon with free retreat, which means you don't need to play another switch. You just play 1 switch, but that's still a switch, a pivot, and you need to start the right Pokemon, and that's awkward. And then this Pokemon obviously doesn't have the highest upside in the game. Its stats are absolutely insane, but it does have some downsides, including if your opponent hits you with Team Devolution. The Palafin switches with the Palafin EX, so the Finizen's still under it. So even though Palafin EX never evolved from Finizen, it is still an evolved Pokemon and also an evolution Pokemon. This is because TM Devolution devolves evolved Pokemon. Something like Archeops is not an evolved Pokemon. Well, it could be theoretically, but presumably it's not an evolved Pokemon when put into play. It's not when put into play Lugia V-Star. So you couldn't TM Devolution, something like that. Um, with weird cards, there's weird rulings. I'm sure there are weird rulings with the cards before, but people didn't really play those cards. Alakazam EX, I guess, had some weird rulings, but most of them are pretty intuitive, from what I've seen at least. The ones that actually come up in game, but Palafin EX definitely has some weird stuff. The evolved versus evolution thing, very weird. I might make a weird rules video, but Palafin EX definitely is a weird card, gimmicky, and it's okay. It's not a terrible card. You can play it with Pekkarunt EX here, and it is actually, it's solid, right? It's a fun card here, but it's not the worst. Certainly, it's probably the best on this list, and it's definitely not the weirdest either. Probably one of the less weird, but still certainly unique, and has a lot of text, and it caused some pretty big issues, right? But then we have Unknown V-Star. There's also Aerodactyl V-Star. That card did see some play. I was like, let me take the one that sees less play. First of all, it's attack Tri-Power for 1 Psychic. 3, you flip 3 coins, 70 for each heads, which is not particularly good, not like completely terrible. It's certainly not an attack that you're like, I really want to do the average of 105 for 1 psychic. I mean, that's like super bad. I don't know. It's not very good either though. Even 3 heads, it is good, but I mean it's less than the Palafin we were just looking at. But it does have 250 HP. That's also bad. So low HP, not great here. Just not very good stats. But of course, you are Pokemon V-Star, and you have a V-Star power. Also, this is Unknown V-Star. The words on it spell out Unknown V-Star, or they spell out V-Star, not Unknown. The Unknown spell out V-Star. There we go. That's Unknown V-Star for you. And the V, yes, it is just a V. Also, there's another Unknown V, which does not evolve into Unknown V-Star. There's 2 apparently. There's Unknown Vacation. Unknown V does not evolve into Unknown V-Star. This is a very weird ruling. I saw it and I was like, what is this? Why did someone ask that? Obviously, it's not a Pokemon V. It does not evolve into Unknown. I mean, it is a Pokemon V because it's a V. Like it literally is a V, and it's a Pokemon, but it's not a Pokemon V. Like subtype, so it does not evolve into Unknown V Star. Obviously, the regular Unknown V evolves into it though, and so you have this ability. Well, no, you don't have an ability actually. You have an attack, and V Star powers are either attacks or abilities. Though this gets a little weird, and you can only use 1 V Star power per game, but your attack says until this Pokemon leaves play, it gains an ability that has the effect the weakness of each of your opponent's Pokemon at play is now Psychic. The amount of weakness does not change. I guess it removes their old weakness. I've never played with this card. I don't think. I mean, it has some funny use cases. Obviously, you look at a Pokemon like a Regidrago V-Star. You look at Dragapult EX, Raging Bolt EX maybe. They have no weakness because they're dragon types. If you're able to hit them for weakness, which we'll actually see a card, Sylveon. No, no. Someone in my Discord server, like we do make custom cards, someone made a custom Sylveon that gave Dragon Pokemon Psychic weakness. But there's an official card that was actually came out after that card was the custom card. But it's a Lily's Clefable, I think, that turns their weakness into Psychic. Does something similar to this V-Star Power. That's an ability. This is also an ability, but it starts out as an attack. Like this Pokemon, when you play it, doesn't have any abilities. So if you're hitting into something like a Cornerstone Mass Ogerpon EX, you could just hit it. But then after you use your V-Star attack, you V-Star Power, V-Star attack, you cannot hit into them anymore because now you have an ability. This ability I don't believe is really removed. I don't exactly know how their rulings work. Certainly if you get knocked out, the ability's gone. But the ability can get turned off, then turned back on. So if your opponent then puts Iron Thorns EX into the active, it's an effect on the Pokemon that it has this ability, but like it's not like the ability goes away if you retreat. It's not like it's just a normal effect of an attack. Um, it might be like a game state thing or something like that. Pokemon rules get really complicated. I certainly know some of them, but I think I'm no more than average, but certainly don't know all of them. It gets really weird. So this card is very strange, not very good. The Aerodactyl will actually show this one off as well. Aerodactyl V-Star, definitely a card that I think is pretty solid. Not super great right now, but has an attack that's 240 for 3, and put the top 3 into your lost zone. It's got like solid stats, nothing like insane here, but it's not bad either. But your attack Ancient Star, which also is only one colorless and is a better V-Star power probably than the Unknown V-Star. It says until this Pokemon leaves play, it gains an ability that has the effect your opponent's Pokemon V in play, except any Aerodactyl V-Star have no abilities. It's kind of like Path to the Peak, the Stadium, or the Iron Thorns EX, though it's different. It's certainly not the same. I mean, they turn off a separate set of Pokemon. Well, they all will turn off Vs. Theoretically, Iron Thorns X wouldn't turn off future Vs, but those don't exist. So they are all turning off Vs, but then Iron Thorns X is turning off other stuff like Radiant Greninja or Gurdurr EX. But this is like an ability locking ability that like gets created. It's kind of weird. And definitely was a meta relevant card. Very good against specifically well, it was good against me VMAX and a few different things, but very specifically good against Lugia V-Star. Keep in mind if this Pokemon's of course knocked out, the ability is now gone. It is never coming back because you can't ever use the attack again. And that's a big issue with Unknown V-Star in particular. It's an expensive attack. It's not like you couldn't pay a turn 2, you definitely could. But even then, now your opponent has a free turn to just hit into you. You don't have that much HP. It's not like you have some defensive ability. You have this ability that's theoretically good, but also, not defensive at all. So your opponent is probably just going to knock you out, and then your ability goes away. So this card's like opens up a big can of worms with its weird ability that's at an attack, or that's from an attack, but it's just bad, unfortunately. It's a cool card, funny card. The Unknown V is like another weird card. I do actually want to shout this one out. Not the Unknown V in brackets, the Unknown, which was the Unknown V Vacation Unknown, but the Unknown V with the attack victory symbol. You can only use this attack when you have one prize card remaining. You win this game. This is when you have one prize, not your opponent. I've definitely seen. I misread it once. Like I was like, yeah, this is what it does. And then someone like made a deck that like got your opponent down to one prize, and then tried to use the attack. But obviously that's not how it works. It's when you have one prize remaining. So if you pretty much already won, you can just win the game, which is weird. Like how can you just like why is there an attack you just win the game? It feels like kind of silly. Like sure they could just have it do like 300 damage and you just like win, or 300 isn't always instantly knocking out everything, but feels fair enough. I mean, or I could just do like 500. That'd be funny. Still presumably win you the game, and I don't know, not just like cards to win the game. This is just something that you don't really see, which is kind of weird. But yeah, then we have the last card, which is Snorlax Doll. I've talked about this with Uncommon Fossil in the worst cards in the Pokemon TCG video. I'm pretty sure that's what we talked about it in. And these were like weird cards. And I'm pretty sure I talked about some of these cards as well. But Snorlax Doll is a really weird card. It's an item with an HP value on it, and it says if this card is in your hand when you're setting up for play, you may put it face down in the active spot or on your bench as if it were a 120 HP basic colorless Pokemon. And you can only do this when you're setting up for play, though. At any time during your turn, you may discard this card from play. It cannot be affected by any special conditions and can't retreat. If this card, which is a Pokemon, is knocked out, your opponent cannot take any prize cards for it. The upside is that they can't take prizes from it. The rest is just a bunch of like stuff. Of course, there are cards kind of like this. There are the fossils. Particularly one of my favorites, Antique Root Fossil, actually has an ability. These cards are weird. This says evolves into. Like this is something that isn't on any other card. I mean, it's on the other fossils, but also, did you know like unidentified fossil and antique root fossil can evolve into the same stage two? In standard, despite the car, I'm pretty sure in live you can. I don't know. I heard that that was a true ruling. Um, it's very bizarre, but anyways, that's for another day. But they're similar. They are basic colorless Pokemon. One thing that I feel like is a bit of an issue, there are no retreat costs on these cards. Like they can not retreat, so it's not like they necessarily need retreat costs for that, but there are attacks that do damage based on retreat cost. So I don't really know how those work. Like I guess they just don't do any damage, or like if it's like Reggie Steel does less for retreat cost, it would do its max damage, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I've never found that out. It's not like they have infinite retreat cost. Like that would kind of make sense because they can't retreat, but that's not how it works. But there's similar stuff going on here. But this you just play as an item during your turn, and then it gets played onto your bench. But Snorlax Doll can start the game. Another card kind of like this is the Luxray from from Crown Zenith with its ability Explosiveness. You can start it if you're setting it up. If you're setting up, you can start it as your active face down, but only as your active. There have been some other cards like this as well. There's the Talonflame. There's a Manectric. There might have been some others, but um, this is a little different. Can be on your bench, can be in the active as well. It actually lets you choose to mulligan or not if Snorlax Doll would be your only Pokemon, which is weird. Like choosing to mulligan, like that's just not normally a thing in the Pokemon TCG, but it is with Snorlax Doll and can't be affected by any special conditions, can't retreat, doesn't give up a prize when knocked out, can be discarded at any time. Like these all seem like abilities, but they're not abilities. It's not like cards like this can't have abilities because the fossils do have abilities, but they also have effects on them that aren't abilities. And also this is like a colorless Pokemon. It can attack. It doesn't have any attacks, but you could stick a technical machine on and then just like attack. Um, but this card like can't really get into play, right? You need to start it in your opening hand. You don't need to start it, but you need to play it as well. Yeah, you need to start it. You don't need to start it in your active. Usually people just start one card, but you could start it on your bench, right? So you do need to start it to play it. Like you could play four of this, but you're not playing four of them down unless you get like the most absurd turn ever. And like how good is this card? I mean, it's not that good, right? Like a 120 HP Pokemon that doesn't give up any prizes is it's good, but like if you could just play this down, it would be good. There was a 30 HP Pokemon that didn't give up any prizes. That was very similar to this, though it could kind of get like recycled, and there were some issues with it. But this is definitely a weird card. Like I feel like they could have just made this as like an A spec that you can actually play, and that would be a card I definitely would not mind seeing in the game as this really unique A spec card that actually is playable. Right, this card is not a card I've essentially ever seen played. It can do some, as I said, some funny things. The controlling mulligans is actually like theoretically useful. You could play 4 of the Luxray, which I showed, 4 of Snorlax Stall, and then which also sounds a lot like the deck Snorlax Stall, which isn't necessarily even like a stall deck. It's more elements of control than it's very complicated, but it sounds very similar to Snorlax Stall. Snorlax Stall does, which is just another like mess, but. Um, you could play 4 Snorlax Doll and 4 Luxray and then just 1 basic, and now odds are you're gonna have a hand where you have some Pokemon that you can start or you can choose not to start. So you can, control mulligans. You can't do this forever. Eventually you'll hit your basic, but you have the option to do mulligans, which is like cool. How useful is it? Obviously, like mulligans are still bad because you're helping your opponent. You're just letting them draw more cards, but it is like a funny option, though they're very, very niche. You could actually do this. I made a deck which is not good, but it plays Snorlax Doll and Luxray and then some random basic, and then it also plays a bunch of fossils, so you can still have basic Pokemon in your deck, but you can't start them. And then you have these cards you can start that you can't play. It's very, very bizarre, but it is a deck, and yeah, Pokemon's got a lot of weird things. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, especially if you didn't know any of these cards, or if you didn't know some of these cards, right? There were definitely some weird cards that are worth checking out, or maybe not worth checking out. But comment down below if you have any other ideas for cards like these, and I'm excited to see you in the next video.